Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Signs of a Cryptocurrency Scam, where we are going to break down some of the most popular crypto scams and best practices to avoid being a victim of them. Just a quick introduction before jumping into the content. I'm Alex Enser, a Web3 market participant since 2013 and founder of My Crypto Advisor, a boutique Web3 consultancy providing consultations and workshops to companies, nonprofits, and C-level executives worldwide. So unfortunately, I've heard horror stories over the years from victims who reported to lose their life savings and college funds for their children due to these scams, which actually led me to seek out Chris here, who I'm very grateful to share the stage with today. Chris Groshong is the president of CoinStructive, a crypto forensic firm that launches fraud investigations for digital asset recovery. So, Chris, do you want to jump in today?
Hey, thanks, Alex. Great to be here. Hi, everybody. Yes, we do crypto fraud investigation work. We also do compliance work as a service. So I act as a fractional compliance officer for several crypto financial institutions in the space, which actually really helps with the fraud side of things because when you're doing compliance work, the victims that are at using like kiosks or exchanges are not trying to tell you what they're doing, right? But victims, when they have realized they've been victimized and need help, are coming to you and telling you the whole story, right? So it really helps with being able to see patterns or recognize patterns when you're talking to other people in other situations because they haven't actually been able to come forward and realize what they're actually experiencing. So a lot of them end up coming way after the fact, many months after they've actually ended sending money, but they they end up having um, conversations with us many months after the fact, which is just it's harder to get success the
I
longer
think
you
it's
wait.
unfortunate, and I hope, I believe education is the best preventative measure for staying safe in this market. And I think by, building awareness, we could help victims, ask for help before things go for too long there.
Yeah, 100%. So what's this? Okay, there we go.
Okay. Well, yeah, I sort of already talked about my consultancy. So yeah, we help with education, onboarding, and engineering. We do, a lot of corporate workshops. We actually had the opportunity to do the Digital Assets Council for Financial Professionals, Mint Your Own NFT workshop. So we were honored to share the stage with, Franklin Templeton, Fidelity, SEC, and actually walk attendees through the process of creating a self-custody MetaMask wallet on their mobile phones and then using that wallet to lazy mint an NFT. We don't do
Cool.
actual financial advisement. We are solely just teaching people how to use the technology. But yeah, Chris, do you want to
That's
jump
great.
into more of what you're up to?
Yeah, so here's a little bit about me. We talked a little bit about it. Like I mentioned, I'm a chief compliance officer, and I've actually done a lot of legislative and regulatory work. Um, it looks, it looks, s- the reason I started doing like legislative and regulatory work is because even though I don't have a background in that, is because I really felt that you don't need to be a lawyer or like somebody who's involved in day-to-day politics in order to help shape and change laws. So there's lots of regular people out there that are just doing what they can to make sure that bad laws are not put into this world. Now, it doesn't always happen that way, but we're trying. So. And this is what we mentioned, right? So the three things that CoinStructive does is fractional compliance, money transmitter licensing. So for those crypto financial institutions that are looking to get licensed, and then the investigation, which is really the bread and butter of the heart and soul of CoinStructive. So here are some staggering numbers that we've gotten from the FBI and also over from the UK. Now, the numbers in the US are in the billions. and I expect this number to be up even in 2023. The numbers are just growing every year. The amount of victims that are being targeted is increasing. The victims are globally being targeted all over the world. Obviously, first world nations first, because that's where there's a lot more money in general. Um, but one of the things that's an actual problem is that people in this space just don't like to report their losses. Now, because for a number of reasons. One, it's embarrassing, right? You don't want to tell people like, oh, I got scammed. Two, the other thing that's a problem is victims are not always truthful about how they acquired assets, right? Or may not have ever claimed them on their taxes in the first place, or so it's really hard then to go and say, well, I lost $50,000 worth of assets. I paid for 10, and people are like, well, where did you get these? How long did you have them? And people don't want to say how they got them because they exchanged five different things to get to that point. Like, and then, you know what I mean? Like, so a lot of times people just sweep it under the rug and be like, well, I guess that was a good ride. But the problem with that, right, is it, I understand that the point, like maybe you did something and you don't want to get yourself in trouble, right? But if you're not even reporting anything in general about addresses that belong to the scammers or other just information that can help law enforcement, you're doing a disservice to not only yourself, but the entire community. Because if there's 500 other people in your situation and all of them don't report, you know, then because they were, let's say, small amount, like it was 8 grand, and you're like, screw it, I'm not, whatever, 8 grand, I'm just gonna deal with it and move on. I'll eventually get that back, right? I'll make it up. But maybe you won't, and maybe there's, like I said, 500 other people in the same situation, and none of them come forward, and then these scammers just get to keep going. So it's really important to try to report your crime, regardless of whether you think it is or not. Okay, so there's numerous types of scams out there, and I think we've all pretty much come across them in one, shape or form. The the biggest one at the top right now is the scam recovery companies, right? This is a big problem because they're preying on people who've already been victims, and it's part of their marketing tactic, which is something that I didn't realize that these folks did originally until I started getting into the space. Because, you talk about scammers and you talk about scams, but if you're not a scammer and you don't run scams, you don't really know what it's like to be on the other side of this thing. So the fact that we have just a lot of information and talk to a lot of people, we kind of get a glimpse into like how the scammers think and what they do and why they do what they do, or at least are able to kind of come up with um, scenarios that make plausible sense as to why something would happen in a certain way. So um, I think one of the biggest things on here too, well, at least one of the more devastating things on here is the SIM swap. So the SIM swap, pardon me, SIM swap is when your phone is ported. So you have a cell phone with a carrier. Somebody gets your credentials. They call your telecom provider. They get them to port your phone to another service. So if you're on AT&T, they'll port it to T-Mobile. If you're on T-Mobile, they'll port it to Verizon. Like they just wherever they can get your phone to onto another device, right? Which basically is recreating all of your apps because it's just like you got a new phone. You just turn on the phone. As soon as the SIM is loaded into the phone, whether usually it's an eSIM, right? That phone is an exact copy of your phone. So now they have everything. They have access to your email. They can start resetting your passwords. All the 2FAs that are text messages start getting sent to your phone, right? It's a really bad situation. You don't have any network service. So like you look at your phone and you're like, what is going on? My phone is broken, right? And then all it takes is an hour 30 minutes for them to have access to your network to be able to reset passwords and then withdraw your crypto. We've seen it numerous times across numerous exchanges. It's and it's actually a it's becoming a very sophisticated scam. Um, and I'll just touch on this a little bit. There was actually a podcast that I listened to. I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but they were explaining that how SIM swaps originally started out as people targeting folks inside the telecom companies for as an insider job. So they were finding people who could get access to being able to port numbers. They were giving them the information of wealthy individuals and telling them, here, we'll give you 50 grand, check your bank account. It's already there. And then they'd port the phone number and then they'd steal millions of dollars for a $50,000 fee, like it's a no-brainer. So eventually what happened was they kind of cleaned up all the insider job stuff and they started going directly into stores. So they have like a smash and grab situation where they have an auction set up online with a date and a time and a place for people to show up. And they literally, somebody runs into the store, grabs the manager's tablet while it's unlocked, and then runs out of the store with it and starts porting numbers, right? Jumps into a car, and in 15 minutes, this auction is up. The numbers are on the site, everything is there, and they're just selling these things. And the auction lasts 10, 15, 20 minutes, done, over, gone, everything disappears. So it's getting really sophisticated on the SIM swaps. We work on SIM swaps as well. We actually work with some attorneys directly to do recoveries, and we've worked with some telecom providers to actually get settlements for people. So it's actually a really good situation, at least from a helping standpoint. It's not a good situation if it happens to you, yeah, obviously. But so let's go into a couple of these scams because some of these are actually interconnected, or they start one way and then they turn into another one of these. So let's move forward here a little bit. So we're going to talk about two of them on the tree, which are the romance scams and the investment scams, right? So this is where there's a couple different ways that this happens, but usually you're getting some randomness, right? Or some random person you get introduced to through some social media channel or some app that you're using, right? Could be a gaming app or something, but there's always a chat feature usually involved in this situation where you start talking to somebody, or you're on a dating site and you start chatting. Sometimes I've been phished with text messages, and had conversations that seemed very weird. Um, and it ended, but it was one of those, oh, wrong number situations, right? And then they start trying to have a conversation with you, um, which is very odd. And then honestly, this is how the confidence is built initially, right? Very slowly, and because they know that you don't know them, and nobody takes anybody's like word right away because there's no trust. So um, they need to get you into a place where you'll start to trust them. And that's the environment that they try to build. Um, so they perpetuate these lies, right? And they're always very, like it says here, attentive and patient. And sometimes the reason they can do this is because there's two or three people masquerading as the person that you're talking to, right? Some of those key signs that you're dealing with more than one person might be the language, that the way that the sentences come across, like the structure, or it could even be the fact of the time that these things are sent. So you're getting a message. Looks like they're always sending messages in the middle of the night. Maybe that's because that's when they're awake, which means they're in a different part of the world, potentially, right? So those are things to look at as well. Um, there's usually this air of I'm right here, but I can't get to you. and we can still have this communication online, right? And that maybe I have this, I'm not poor. I'm actually well off. Uh, I'm in a difficult situation, but like they build a persona to get somebody comfortable with the idea of the person that they're talking to, right? You want to make this identity that as the scammer that you're perpetrating, something that's believable and comfortable for the victim. So they build these profiles, right? Um, a lot of these, yes, those examples of the professions, those are definitely ones that they use quite often because they're really hard for people to kind of confirm. Okay, so here are some numbers or some pictures of folks that have been used in other scams. These are actual people who have had their profiles hacked or their images taken, their data, and then they're used to create these other alternate profiles and scam folks. Um, so, and nowadays, right, there's tools to even just create images of people that don't even exist using AI. So, um, one of the disturbing things, and we didn't really mention them on the scam page, is that the deep fake situation is getting a lot better. Um, there's things like vishing, so video phishing, where they can take a picture like from one of these people, apply it using an open source tool through their video software, just like I'm using today, right? As a third party camera software that pushes it through to the computer, and it has a bunch of functionality and plugins and things. And one of the plugins is this tool, and it's supposed to be a tool for testing KYC, right? Know your customer. So when you're at a bank or when you're at a crypto exchange and they ask you for your ID, right? You need to be able to test the software that does the selfies, things like that. So they have this software that maps your face to an image so that you can check it for live check, what do they call it? Live check, like a liveness check, right? So where they make you turn your head to make sure that you're actually a real person. Well, if you've mapped somebody else's face to your face and the software can't tell the difference, then it's going to think, and if you have a copy of this person's ID, right? So a lot of times they'll create, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself here on the scam, but right, they'll create this you'll have these accounts, right? And you'll be able to use them. Uh, and they'll send you to like a fake investment site and they'll ask you for your ID, right? And then if you give them your ID and they have your selfie, well, then they can use that to create accounts on legitimate exchanges and open accounts in your name that they use to launder funds. And that's the like the long end of the scam is they have your money, but they got to be able to do something with it. So they need to be able to create accounts, other places to launder the money. Before they would just set up fake accounts. Now they're setting up fake accounts with real credentials. So when the FBI or some, Interpol or somebody shows up knocking on the door of the exchange saying, "Hey, we know this money went into this account. Who is it?" And then the exchange gives them, "It's Andy Stevens." Well, how did Andy Stevens get an account in a foreign country when he's a US citizen? And two, this isn't the real guy, right? So it's one of those things where it's becoming a really big problem. And that's actually not being talked about very much, right? We mentioned the building the trust part, right? Because this is how they get you to move forward with the scam. And it's really about building that trust, right? I mean, whatever they can do to continually feel like you're being engaged. A lot of times people just are lonely, right? So just the fact that they have somebody to talk to is enough to keep them going. A lot of times they'll promise that they're going to visit at some point and it never happens, right? That's definitely one of the things. All right, so if they're if they're not asking you to send money to a website to invest for yourself, which is usually the theme, right? It's not send me money and let's, all invest it for you. It's I did this, I made money. Look how well I did. I bet you could do the same thing. I'll help you. Just go to this site. Just put your money here. And now the scammers have even gotten better to the point where they know that people aren't going to go big on the first try, right? Meaning they're not going to deposit large numbers of cash or large amounts of money initially because they don't really know what's happening. And so they put in maybe, let's say, 5 grand, and they see some of the numbers go up. So then they try to withdraw like $1,000 and they are successful. These fake exchanges are letting people withdraw some money because they know that that instills confidence. Then they turn around the victims and dump in 10 times as much. They'll put in $100,000, right? And next thing you know, then the scam really kicks in, right? Like now you can't get your money out. Now you're being paid for fees and taxes and all this stuff. And they got you, right? So the other side of the coin is, oh my gosh, I find myself in this situation. I really need help. Can you help me? Just send me 1,500 bucks, or I need 3 grand to get out of this situation, or whatever it is, right? I need to get back home and something happened, my passport and blah, blah, whatever it is. They have 1,000 stories. Um, and yeah, it's really difficult sometimes for people to understand what's real, what's not. All right, so then the last part, right, we mentioned is, hey, you gotta you gotta get the money from the victims, right? So this is where they just keep pushing them to give more money until the victim realizes like something's wrong, or I don't have any more money to give and I can't get it out. Like they've taken loans, they've borrowed, they've moved money from retirement accounts, like anything that they can do to get the access to more money. Usually this is the step, right? It's they've got them in, they finally got them in the door, they got them believing, they got them a couple deposits, and then they just need to keep pushing them until all the money's gone, right? Um, and usually it's not all of the money's gone, but like 80% of the victim's money is usually gone at this point. And so this is when we end up falling into even further bad situations, right? So you've now been scammed. You now are starting to realize, oh my God, something's wrong. This doesn't feel right. What do I do? Right? And this is where we get to the victim's dilemma. And the problem here, right, is that the victim is looking for help. And in this industry, there is not a lot of help, unfortunately. There is help, but it's really hard. Sometimes it's really hard to find. So here's a typical path of what happens with a victim, right? I bought crypto on an exchange. Then I've been engaged with these scammers for X amount of time, and I sent my funds off and I got scammed. The first thing I'm going to do is go back to the place where I bought the crypto and say, "Hey, look what happened to me. I don't know what to do. What should I do?" And the exchange says, "Hey, sorry, you took the money off of our platform. There's nothing we can do. Go to the police. Maybe they can help you." And so then they go to the police. And law enforcement says, "Oh, we don't have the tools. Sorry, like we can't really do this work. We're not fully funded and we haven't been trained and we just don't have the resources." So you go, "Okay, well, what do I do now?" And they go, "Oh, well, you should talk to the feds." Okay, great. So then you contact the FBI, you submit an IC3 report. If you're lucky enough to get somebody to call you back, all right, or you can get a hold of somebody at a field office, whether it's Secret Service, Homeland Security, or the FBI, right? If you lost $150,000, what you might hear is, "Hey, we're really sorry you lost $150,000, but your case is too small for us to pursue." Now, if you lost $150,000 and it was most of your life savings, no person in their right mind is going to sit there and accept that as a final answer, right? Like that's not human nature. Human nature is I'm going to do whatever I can to help myself. And if other people aren't going to help me, I'm going to continue to try to help myself until I get a resolution or I feel I have some closure. And so what happens is people go out looking for help. They'll go on social media, they'll go on Reddit, they'll go on forums, they'll start talking on Twitter. And then the next thing you know, they're hit up by all these recovery scam people. They're like, "Oh, I got a friend at so and so, and he talked to this guy and they were able to help him get his money back." And you'll see like 10 posts like that. And they're all different accounts, they're all different names, but a lot of them are saying go to the same guy, right? That's all scams. It's all scams. There's bots that are looking for people saying that they've been scammed, and then they post trying to target those people to get them into a recovery scam, right? But victims don't know that that's a thing. So they end up getting scammed again when they're trying to find help, right? And part of that problem is that the exchanges, law enforcement, and yeah, law both, well, federal and state law enforcement and exchanges are not giving people the proper direction on what to do, right? So let's talk about the recovery scam companies. Okay, so this is a gentleman who supposedly is able to help you get your stuff back through essentially like hiring a hacker, right? Now, there have been stories where this type of activity has been successful, but it is by far the hardest and the most unlikely success story. Um, so people are then thinking, oh, well, I'll just if I can't, hire a company, maybe I'll hire a person and they'll be able to hack the wallet and get it back. Now, that doesn't usually work, right? And I think one of the other interesting things um, of here is that this picture actually comes up in a lot of different places. So this person is actually either doing a lot of like spokesperson for hire type stuff, like he's just making videos for people and hyping them up, or this isn't even a real person and this is an AI thing that's being generated to use to create multiple videos to get people to fall prey to these scams, right? So it's very interesting that, and maybe it's legitimate. Maybe he thinks he's doing something legitimate and is just getting paid, right? And doesn't know the source, but actually is actually perpetuating the crime and making it worse for people. All right. So again, false promises. These are the things that these recovery scam companies will tell you. Most of them are not true, right? So they will guarantee you some sort of a recovery and it'll happen fairly quickly. And yes, they'll able to hack it back, right? They'll show you a picture of a wallet that contains at least as many funds as you had in your wallet and convince you that those are your funds. They found them. We're just going to hack this wallet and we're going to get it back. But people don't know enough about crypto, which is why I'm really excited to be working and have been working with Alex with victims for quite a while, is because he's able to help educate people. The problem with a lot of folks right now in this space is that crypto is enough mainstream that people have heard of it, right? It's not it's not 5 or 6 years ago where it's only talked about when it hits all new highs, right? It's every day there's news about it, there's things happening, people are hearing about it. It's commonplace. But what's not commonplace is how this stuff actually works. And so the problem is that people know just enough to get themselves into trouble, right? And because you can't tell the difference between if somebody tells you, oh, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z to move your money here, to do this, to do that, you go, oh, okay, sounds right, I guess. I don't know how to determine whether or not that's real, but I know that that's kind of how crypto works. So, okay, I'm in, right? And that's the problem. You don't know enough to determine or be able to determine whether or not what you're dealing with is real, right? And that's the problem is because it's still so new. And so they've basically got a pipeline to build that confidence, get you comfortable, right? Allow you to withdraw, and then boom, then you're in hook, line, and sinker for the big bucks, right? And then you get into the recovery scams, right? Right after that. And the problem with the recovery scam, actually, just real quickly to point out, is they are taking, right, basically victims who are at their worst like point in their life, right? They've already been devastated and they're basically selling the scammers who now realize that they're not going to get any more money out of this person. They are selling that information to other scammers because there's no point for them to keep targeting you because they know you're done. So it's like a marketing. It's like marketing, right? I mean, you don't we're all used to clicking a box and saying, "Oh, I opt out. I don't want you to sell my information." The scammers, they don't care. They'll sell it to everybody. They'll give it away. Like they don't even care. Um, they want other people to continue the scams, right? And once you're a scam victim, you are on a scam list. And so you will be targeted into perpetuity, basically. And so they don't care if it's 3 years down the road and you end up giving $1,500 to somebody because that person, wherever they live, might be in a country or an area of the world where $1,500 might last them 4 or 5 months or longer, right? Like nobody cares that they scammed you, right? They're out for personal gain. And it may be a situation that they're in a dire situation. Um, and so also I didn't mention about the romance scams, and I really wanted to, and I will before we get too far here, and I'll talk about some of these red flags before I let Alex jump into the to his part of the deck. But um, so obviously these are the red flags, but I really want to talk about something about the romance scam side of things. Um, oh, I totally just lost my train of thought. So maybe I'll come back to it afterwards. But um, unsolicited outreach.
No, you okay over there? Technical difficulties?
Sorry, my headphones turned off because there's no audio coming in.
We are
I
so
guess
dependent on technology.
it just decided I wasn't using it apparently and decided to shut me off. Um, so so these are the red flags, right? They promise they will never deliver what they can. They'll never meet with you in person or live. Or if they do, it's usually not them. Um, they're only taking crypto for their payments, right? Like at CoinStructive, we allow people to pay in credit card because if you really are not happy with our service, you can you can contact the credit card company and get it reversed. None of these other companies do that. There's no way to get your money back. And that's a red flag, right? Like that's something that you should really be concerned about. Um, all right. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Alex to jump in and get in on his part of the deck. So,
It's
Alex.
interesting you bring up the irreversible nature of cryptocurrency transactions. I always appreciate how you highlight the emotional impact these scams have on victims. And, you also made a good point about the challenge of identifying what's real and what's not real, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence. For a $30 a month subscription, anyone can create a deep fake video based off an image they found on an internet or clone somebody's voice. So yeah, it's a very unprecedented time we're living through. And like I mentioned earlier, I really do believe education is the best preventative measure for staying safe in this market that is currently sitting at $1.6 trillion. And, over the course of the next decade, that number could grow much higher and could unfortunately also attract more scams and increase victims. So again, education is important. I want to approach the next few slides from more of like a fundamentals perspective. I noticed, and Chris sort of mentioned this earlier too. I have noticed that scammers will use the nomenclature of this technology. They'll use the words such as blockchain or gas fees to sound legitimate, but often use the terms in factually incorrect ways to take advantage of the victim who is unfamiliar with this industry. So a digital wallet is software that allows you to manage and store your digital assets, through a web browser such as Google Chrome, a mobile phone, or a hardware wallet like the one shown on the screen here. Um, so what's the paradigm shift here is that these wallets are non-custodial. They allow you, the user, to self-custody your digital assets, meaning that instead of a bank or a brokerage holding custody of your assets, you are the one personally responsible for better and for worse. Digital wallets also serve as a login for all the applications you encounter. They eliminate the need for you to memorize hundreds of usernames and passwords, and these digital wallets connect to applications. I really want to emphasize that today, that your wallet connects to the applications, which when you connect to these applications, they still allow you to retain custody of your assets. I've noticed from a lot over the years, a lot of victims from these investment scams. These scams will often require you to transfer your assets to the platform as opposed to connecting your wallet. And again, like we said earlier, these cryptocurrency transactions are irreversible at this time. So you really need to be vigilant when transferring funds from your custody to another. Oftentimes these scammers, the funds may be in your custody with an exchange that the scammer might have you open up, during those romance scams that Chris talked about. So, at first, it may be harmless enough where you bought some cryptocurrency on a probably a legitimate platform, but then there comes the time where the scammer will unfortunately have you transfer those funds, into their custody. So yeah, let's jump into the recovery phrase process. So, all right, basically, whether it's a software wallet that's on your mobile phone or your web browser, or it's a hardware wallet that's like a miniature USB device, these devices or softwares generate a 12 to 24 word seed phrase or recovery phrase that are basically used to back up your assets. Um, Again, there's a lot of personal responsibility that comes with self-custody. You want to make sure that nobody ever gains access to your seed phrase, because if they're able to gain access to those 12 to 24 words, they basically have access to the account with your funds on it. And as long as you have those 12 to 24 words, you're able to recover those assets from anywhere in the world. So, the main takeaway with this slide is that, it doesn't matter if it's a publicly traded company such as Coinbase or a wallet provider such as MetaMask or Ledger. Those companies should never be reaching out to you, and they should never, ever ask for your seed phrase. If somebody on the internet is asking you for those 12 to 24 words, it's 100% scam. So, as a scientist, I like to use 99%, but nobody should be asking you for that seed phrase. So, decentralized applications. So I touched on this briefly earlier about how your wallet connects to applications on this new internet that we call Web3. So the applications in this space are called dApps, which stand for decentralized applications. As I mentioned earlier, scammers will use the language of this industry to manipulate their victims. I've heard several victims over the years report that they transferred their funds to an application called dApp. or transferred their funds to a dApp. Again, your wallet connects to the dApp. Your wallet connects to the application. You retain custody of your assets. So, a couple other things I wanted to note here. So if you're an active user in the space, there's a few misconceptions. So there's two things I wanted to touch on. There's disconnecting your wallet and removing token approvals. What a lot of wallets will allow you to disconnect your wallet from an application, but they don't allow you to remove token approvals. Approvals refer to the authorizations that you grant to these applications that you interact with, which allow them access to specific tokens in your cryptocurrency wallet. There are several tools that allow you to remove these token approvals or to at least view them. Revoke Cash is an application that allows you to view these token approvals across several different blockchain networks and allows you to remove them. Etherscan, the popular Ethereum block explorer, also allows you to remove token approvals, but at this time only for the Ethereum network. Why this is important is that if you have approved a token approval for an application that let's say a hacker has hacked, you do run the risk of those funds being depleted. I believe recently I saw a headline in the news that a application got hacked recently and somebody had their Bored Ape Yacht Club, which goes for a significant sum of money. So somebody basically had their expensive non-fungible tokens stolen from them because they still had a token approval with one of the applications. So again, the main thing here is to always remember to use some of the tools I have listed here to remove your token approvals. And then just wanted to briefly bring up the dreaded gas fees. Actually, I did have a question for Chris, if you're still unmuted, not to put you on the spot, but I was curious, are there any, in your line of work, have you noticed if there's any blockchains or cryptocurrencies that you see the scams are more often in?
Um, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on Ethereum. A
A
lot of
lot
stuff
on
is on
Ethereum, okay.
a lot. I mean, because it's the biggest built on platform. So there's also the most amount of stable coins on the Ethereum network, which is typically what the scammers will push people to. It's either Bitcoin or stable coins, because people that they're scamming are more comfortable with holding a digital asset that reminds them of a dollar than of some random token that they don't know what it is or how it works. So it's usually those two things. But the Tron network is by far one of the biggest USDT money laundering platforms.
So yeah, that's actually why I asked to sort of confirm. My anecdotal experience has been, I've seen a lot of victims report that they sent the Tron USDT version, on the Tron network. So I've seen a lot of that over the years. And I read this report recently from a hedge fund that reported that in the first half of 2023, we actually saw 40, what was it again? Weekly, basically 40% of the transactions of stablecoins are happening on the Tron network, which made me speculate that, maybe there's a lot of, scams happening over there. Yeah, so what are gas fees? Imagine if you're a business owner and you use Visa or MasterCard, a payments network to accept payments. Merchants often have to pay a exorbitantly high credit card fee. No offense to Visa or MasterCard there. So these cryptocurrencies that we're talking about today, they run on networks, and to transact on the network, you have to pay a network fee. You have to pay a gas fee. I personally often like to compare it to a car. So obviously imagine you have a car, you have to put gas into it so the car runs. Imagine that the Ethereum network, that network is your car, and then it needs gas for for it to run. So my main point on this slide is that, like I mentioned earlier, scammers will often twist the gas fee nomenclature. They'll often tell you that in order to remove your funds from their platform, you need to pay a gas fee. Sometimes I've seen clients report from, $1 to $10,000. So as you can see from this chart I compiled here, these were some of the gas fees for transferring USDT. It was December 15th. I randomly pulled these numbers. As you can see here, Ethereum is out of the bunch considered a very expensive network to transact on. But by expensive, we're talking maybe $10, right, to send USDT. These other networks, the majority of these networks we're talking pennies. We're talking dollars and pennies to transact. So if somebody's telling you you need to pay, $1,000 to move money, that's just factually incorrect. And that's what I want to emphasize there. So, Chris, what is the law of law enforcement in all of this?
Thanks, Alex. Yeah. Um, so law enforcement's role, right, in this whole thing, obviously we do investigation work, right? And we're civilians. And as a civilian, we're only able to do so much. So, meaning like I can't call an exchange and say, hey, give me the information of the person that this account belongs to, right? Or this wallet address belongs to. The exchange isn't going to do that. That's like calling up a bank and asking for bank account information, right? Um, the exchanges want to protect their customers first and foremost, and they should, right? Like imagine being able to call up a bank and just have somebody's bank account shut down because you told them that, hey, this guy's scamming me, and they're like, okay, great, we're just gonna freeze all their funds until we can figure it out. Like that doesn't happen in the banking world because um, imagine just being able to like effectively SWAT somebody's bank account, like send a SWAT team in and just shut it down. And um, that's not really the essence of what we're trying to accomplish, right? We're trying to stop bad actors, but we kind of need a balance between allowing good guys and bad guys to have access to the same kind of um, methods. So one of the things that law enforcement does really well is they're able to produce warrants and subpoenas to then freeze and seize assets. And the problem currently is that there's just not enough law enforcement folks who know how to do this. That's the real problem, is that there is, it's getting better. Like I have to admit, like every year that I've been doing this, there are more law enforcement, there are more people ready to help than there ever have been, and we are getting more recoveries than we ever have been. And I'm actually really excited about that because we're finally getting money back for people. But it's taken a while for law enforcement to come around. And one of the problems is that, um, like as I mentioned, as you can see here, right, like they don't have the tools, they don't have the manpower, but also, when it comes to like working with victims, they're they don't have all of the uh, I guess they don't have the knowledge necessarily to be able to tell people how to get help when they can't help them, right? Because what happens, like I mentioned, law enforcement, if they say they can't help you, then they just tell you, hey, sorry, we can't help you. And that's it. There's nothing else you can do, right? Um, but there needs to be other options for people. There needs to be something else where you can go to get help, right? And so that's yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. The headphones can also connect to Bluetooth, and I got a phone call. So technology.
People don't mind to listen to that.
It was law enforcement calling, so that's good.
Oh, they should be on the call here. It's
Let me
relevant.
let me patch them in real quick. Um, so what we do at CoinStructive and how we help victims is, like we mentioned, it's important for people to talk to somebody because there's not a lot of good information out there. And when you actually talk to somebody, right, and you can have a live chat with somebody like through a video call, that helps immensely understand the process and get you in the direction where you need to be. Because a lot of times victims are in a state of distress And when you're in these high stressful situations, you're not actually able, there's clinical proof that shows you're not able to make effective decisions. So, and you also don't retain information, right? There's like a block. It's like you're just, information's just hitting, bouncing off your face. Um, you're not absorbing any of it. So we have these conversations with people, and then we get off the phone, and it's like they forget everything we just told them. So we send PDFs and other stuff to follow up with them to help them stay up to date on everything and keep involved. But it's not exactly easy to try to convince people, one, that they're scammed, because sometimes they come to us and they just want help, like getting their crypto out of an exchange. They don't even realize they've been scammed yet, right? So like the psychological process of getting to the point of understanding that you are a victim is also a big hurdle in this space. So this is why we do, and this is why we do it the way we do it, right? Intake, have a live call, do an initial analysis, because we need to be able to determine what's actually happened to the coins before the tokens before moving forward with a report. A lot of these other forensic companies will charge you thousands of dollars up front and then tell you, oh, it looks like your coins went through a tumbler. Or, oh, in 2 hops, your coins went to OKX or KuCoin or something, right? Like, there's no reason to charge somebody several thousands of dollars to then turn around and tell them there's nothing you can do, or it's all gone, or it's not in a good situation, right? It's just because we do it very synonymous to car repair, right? So if your car is making some weird noise or leaking some fluid, right? You take it to the mechanic, and the mechanic says, "Hey, for a couple $100, I'm going to give you an estimate to find out what's really wrong with the car." Because if your transmission is leaking, right, that's a big problem. But if the leak is actually from your windshield wiper housing, that's not a big problem. It might cost a couple $100 to fix, but like you're probably going to move forward with it, right? And that's because you were able to be given the information about what the situation is so you can make a confident decision going forward. If you don't know what the situation is and you're just throwing money at something, how do you know what the result is going to be? So that's why we do it in these steps, because it really helps people understand if they want to move forward to spend more money or not, right? Because they've already been scammed and people are now even more tight with their purse strings. So you want to make sure that people are comfortable with moving forward step by step.
That you're feeling
And
extra vigilant after losing sometimes millions of dollars,
well, and just not even that, it's like if you've been scammed twice, you got scammed through this romance scam through a fake investment platform, then you got scammed with a recovery company. Imagine talking to a legitimate company at this point. Like, how are you going to even, you're not going to trust anybody at this point, right? So,
Yeah, it's going to stick with you, unfortunately, for probably the rest of your life, right? That
yeah,
moment. But on a more
yes.
positive note, we have Q&A here. So if anyone wants to put any questions into the chat, yeah, please feel free. Or are they going to let us off the hook here?
We'll move to the last slide, but we'll keep the Q&A going.
So, these wallet addresses, they're public, right? So they're like emails. And as you're aware, anyone can send, if you have an email address, anyone can send you an email. And I noticed, in my digital wallet, there's just a lot of spam. Like, do you ever hear anything from, people that have fallen for those types of scams or?
So there are airdrop scams to be aware of as well. So that's when people will either offer to um, give you free tokens. But one of the big problems with the smart contract platforms in general, all of the smart contract blockchains or ones that have EVMs or virtual machines to do the processing of smart contracts, the real big problem is that smart contracts in general are self-executing code, right? So as soon as it gets triggered, it just does its thing, and there's no way to stop it. And that's how a lot of this crypto stuff works, right? So if you're not a developer and you don't write code, you probably can't read code either, right? This goes back to the same sort of concept or problem that we had when we were getting into smartphones, and then there were apps in the app stores, and they didn't tell you what permissions they were using on your phone. You download a calculator, and why does this calculator need access to my pictures and my microphone and my camera?
My
It,
flashlight, yeah, needs
yeah, it
access to
doesn't
where my
why does
GPS.
yeah, why does a calculator need access to all that stuff? It shouldn't. I should probably find a different calculator app to use, right? But there was in the early days, there was no way to tell what that app was doing. Now it tells you, you look down and you scroll down, you can say, okay, this is the permissions it's going to use. Okay, cool. We don't have that in crypto yet. We don't have the, I'm going to connect to this smart contract. What is it going to do? I don't know. It's the guy on the website or the website says it's going to do this. But when I connect, is it? How do I know that? I don't. I'm trusting. I have
Trust but
faith,
verify.
right? And so if you can't really verify the smart contract and you're not really sure what it's going to do, there are things that can happen like it could actually access your private keys without you actually typing in that 20, 12 or 24 word phrase that Alex mentioned. You can actually access private keys from the wallet if you give it permission, right?
Yeah.
So in the code, it may be asking for this, and when you agree, you think you're doing agreeing to one thing, but you're actually agreeing to like five other things also. And if you can't tell, that's when people are like, "Oh my God, my wallet just got drained. I don't know what happened." Or I some tokens were airdropped to me and they had malicious code which accessed my private key and then they drained my entire wallet. So you got to be, it's unfortunate, but you have to be extremely vigilant in this space, especially with free stuff. Nothing's free anymore. There was this time where people were just giving away tokens and because it was part of the legal requirement basically for that not to be a security, right? And people were trying to find these workarounds so they could launch their projects without getting in trouble with government agencies. And then people started realizing that they could do this in a malicious way and steal funds, and that's where things went next. So it's
The
it's a it's an ever evolving mess, let's just say.
Yeah, I mean the user experience is completely lacking here. The smart contracts you're talking about, it looks like Greek. I've been in the industry, around 10 years now, and I don't know what I'm signing off on half the times. It's very concerning. And if we want to get to the 3 billion users that our industry always talks about, like how are we going to get there with this type of user experience? But I do believe it's similar to being in the internet of the 90s right now. We are in the AOL stages of this technology. And to your point, I think over time, we're going to be able to verify, what permissions, what kind of access we are providing these applications.
Yeah,
So,
I'd really like to see something on the website where before as I click on to connect my wallet that it's going to tell me what I'm connecting to and what that smart contract is going to do, just like the app stores. I think that's the biggest step that I think needs to happen for consumer protection. If somebody can figure out a way to to take, smart contract language and turn it into English, in a couple bullet
mhm.
points. Like the same thing happens in the App Store. There's code doing all those things. They don't show you the code. They tell you what it does, right? And then if that thing doesn't do what it's supposed to do and you do get scammed, then that entity either had somebody swap out malicious code or they are malicious of themselves. So yeah, there's a lot we can still do in this industry. So
I
if
even
anybody
think,
wants to run with that idea, free idea.
hey, we could be making millionaires today with these ideas. But yeah, I mean, even recently with the front end of different websites that use the Ledger Connect feature, people visiting, I think it was Sushi Swap was one of them. They were receiving, oh, sign off on this smart contract so we could drain your funds, just because the front end was a supply chain attack with Ledger's software. But yeah, again,
Yep.
I just can't imagine people new to the industry just telling them one day, "Oh, don't surf the internet. You might get hacked." I just we did have one question in here, and then we gotta probably take off. Can OSINT be helpful with avoiding these scams?
OSINT. OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence. That's just what you can gather by digging around on the internet. And yes, OSINT is a very useful technology. And I just used some OSINT on a case for a compliance client recently. Somebody actually sent us a picture that they snapped with their phone, or at least that's what it looked like. So there are tools out there that you can download that are free that will tell you all of the metadata of that behind that picture. So like if you download a picture from Instagram, the metadata is going to come from Facebook, Instagram, and it's not going to be very useful. But if somebody snaps a picture on their phone and sends that actual picture to you, you get the phone device, you get geolocation, you get aperture, you get like all the detailed, like where the picture was taken, like how far above sea level, like everything. Like, I mean, it is insane the data that you can get from just a picture, right? And so I was able to determine that this person was in a certain place at a certain time on a certain day taking this picture, right? With this device, right? And that is a lot of information that law enforcement can use. So that's not a crypto. That's just that's just information from a picture. And that would be considered something like open source intelligence.
I was going to say, consider all the open intelligence on these public blockchains, such as Ethereum, or, what kind of information law enforcement is currently able to glean, and then, in the future. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Open
that's another
yeah.
area people should innovate on.
Yeah, open source intelligence is a big one. It's a very big one. It's definitely a complementary to blockchain investigations because most blockchain investigations or forensics work doesn't have personal identifiable information, right? So there's no personal attribution. You might get exchanges or darknet markets or tumblers, things like that, but it's not going to be like, this is Alec Enser's wallet, right? Like it's not going to say, this is Chris Groshong's wallet. Um,
Unless you have like an
those will be
Ethereum
private.
domain attached to it, right?
Yeah, and even then the wallet won't necessarily say that on the block explorer. You'll have to dig to find that NFT, which is the ENS, is part of that wallet. So it's
And
not
then
even obvious all the time either.
and then even then it's, the owner of Starbucks.eth. Is that actually Starbucks, or is that just a
Right.
random person on the internet? So
Exactly.
awesome. Well, Chris, thank you again for this awesome webinar. Where could
Thanks for
everybody
hosting.
find you?
Right there on the slide. You can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Groshong, or on social media. I'm DJ Kinkle everywhere. That's another story to get into as to how that name came around, but uh,
Maybe on a
uh,
Twitter space, or
it's I used to DJ, so um, vinyl
it's on my
records.
to-do list, actually.
So it's but yes, that's my social media handle. You can email the company if you also want to get directly in contact with me, or you can hit me up and DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter.
All right, awesome. All right, everyone. And two, I'm also grateful for all of you that took the time out of the day to be here with us. So, all right, until next time.